We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
Recent weeks, trolling Senator Elizabeth Warren as a snake, and in post after post, labeling Mayor Pete Buttigieg a rat.
That's what Americans do now. They're always willing to trade away a little of their freedom in exchange for the feeling, the illusion of security.
But we tortured some folks.
Rudy Giuliani, there's only three things he mentioned in a sentence, a noun and a verb and 9/11. I mean...
My mom is the strongest woman I know.
She should
This
be
is
running.
not about...
I moved on her like a bitch. They had and they have a very effective slam machine. And that the way it works is you either report the news the way we want it reported, or we're going to hang a sign around your neck.
We came, we saw, we died.
You know, I know that Russia and other countries would love us to have a debate. This is exactly what they want.
We call it the Putin Protection Act. That's what it is. The Putin Protection Act.
ADL is played out. Nobody knows who the ADL are. Stop giving them attention. Nobody cares about the ADL.
Remember the heat that ended up around the bend the knee and Colin Kaepernick. Mm-hmm. Many smart people have said it actually was not a thing. The Russian bots started taking that.
Start bringing the ruckus on the Democratic Party.
I found that this was like really nice to just help me doze off.
Citizens of the internet, welcome to episode 44 of Politics. Hope you like my new intro. It needs a little work, but I threw some choice cuts in there for you. I think it's got some really good stuff. Specifically, AOC's transition from bringing the ruckus to the Democratic Party over to doing sleep mask commercials on TikTok as an influencer marketer, which is what she does now. Anyway, I hope you're having a good week despite the dark cloud over the world. It's, you know, I haven't gone into the weeds as much on the Israel-Palestine thing. And I've said this before, as I would like to, and I've said this before, it's largely because there are other people, I think, doing a phenomenal job covering it. And I try to be a little bit different, you know. I'm still reporting on a lot of the same things other people are reporting on, but, you know, I watch Due Dissidence, I watch RBN, I watch Jimmy Dore, I watch Useful Idiots, Gray Zone. I watch all the stuff that you guys watch too. So I don't want to just be regurgitating that stuff. I try to dig up some stuff that's new, and I think I got a pretty jam-packed show for you tonight. So I'm going to start with my little monologue here because I've been out in the city a lot lately, talking to a lot of different people and different types of people in different parts of the city, rich parts, middle class, poor parts, all parts of the city. And it gives me hope for humanity in the sense that I think people are genuinely, of all stripes, are genuinely good-natured and good-hearted people. And I've had a couple interesting experiences, specifically with Jewish people who are like, yo, I don't support what's going on. I'm not a Zionist. And as the Due Dissidence boys were saying today, it's been inspiring. It's been heartening to see the people coming out of the woodworks and not being afraid to stand up and say, yo, this is not okay. This is just not okay. So that makes me feel good. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about the electric car thing, right? Because you're looking at a guy who's been driving an EV for the last little while. And I want to just kind of like rant a little bit about it, right? So, first off, it's far from perfect. Um, the biggest problem, we'll start with the bad news, is the charging infrastructure for these cars is not quite there yet. And I think that it has the potential to get there quickly, but right now it's got some holes in it. And I use a solution which I won't call out, but they have charging stations all over the city of Los Angeles. And you use an app to connect to them. And a lot of times the chargers are down, there's people there. The app will tell you too if someone's using it. Even if there's like 3 open chargers, I'll get there and they'll all be taken by the time I get there within like 10 minutes or whatever, however long it takes me to get there. So that's a problem. And then there was a night that I drove down to Santa Monica and I only had like a 20-mile charge left on my car. And I got stuck in Santa Monica at this charging station, and there were like 12 chargers and not one of them worked. Like their system was down for the night. So I did see that because my email is in their app, they're starting to send me updates like, hey, our system's going to be down for upgrades on this from this time, which is cool. I'll give them a nod for that. But I'll also say this, bad parts aside, the car itself is sick. It's a Hyundai, and they've obviously taken a nod from Tesla's design and Tesla's engineering, because the car itself is like car 2.0. It drives so nice. If I'm in like hilly parts of the city, it just, a regular gas car, you got to kind of like rely on the idle. You got to brake. You got to stop it from rolling backwards. You don't have to worry about that with an electric vehicle. And these things, man, this little thing, it flies. It just like a Tesla from 0 to 60 in a matter of seconds. And I'm not just going to rant about this all night, but I wanted to share this info because I think it's relevant. I had a conversation with this dude the other day, and he rides the one-wheel scooters, right? Some people call them hoverboards, but they're like the little donut scooters, the one-wheel scooters, right? So this guy, we got to talking about electric cars because I was giving him I was doing ride share. I was giving him a ride in my car, and he goes, we started talking about electric cars and everything, and he's like, yeah, I'm part of this community for these donut, scooter things. And he goes, there's a big modding element in this community, and people can hack into these things and like rewrite the software. Like, obviously people that can program can do that. But people have already figured out ways to mod these. And he's like, I see that attitude carrying over eventually to electric cars in the same way that, there's hot rod communities with regular cars, diesel, gas powered cars. So the other thing is I see the charging stuff evolving so fast. Think about it like this. Like the car itself to me is like driving an iPhone, because it has all these weird little, it's got apps, all these little bells and whistles, it's got like a little blind spot detector and stuff. But think about how fast the iPhone evolved. These cars are going to do the same thing. It's only a matter of time before you can be able to drive up to your house and either plug it into like a regular wall socket or have like a Bluetooth charger that like while you're at home, it just automatically charges your car. There's going to be some shit like that eventually. The technology, I think, will evolve quickly. So anyway, that's my rant about electric cars. So let's move into tonight's subject matter. And I want to start with the news media. And, you're watching it happen right now with Israel, the march to war again. They never have every time, there's always a good way. The press always has no problem justifying these wars. And what's saddening to me is the loss of critical thinking by people who stood beside me during the Iraq war era and opposed that war. You know, now that it's a Democrat in charge, and I totally blame this on Obama. I think this was Obama's biggest success, is that he was able to quietly allow the Democrats to become the hawk party in the name of, you know, fake woke. I hate calling it that, but identity politics. You know, the meme with the two bomber jets. One has a Black Lives Matter and a rainbow sticker. That's the Democrats. The one without is the Republicans. Boy, do I have some gems for you tonight as far as clips go. So I happened across this this video of Henry Rollins, and it's from his show. He had a show, and this was like back in the 2000s, like 2007, I think, maybe. But anyway, Rollins had a show, and he did political commentary and had guests and stuff. But I want to start this segment is really just about the war machine's media apparatus and how good it is at duping people. And oh my God, have I got some good stuff for you. So first, watch this clip. Let's watch this clip of Rollins from his TV show. And just it's not too long. I think you're gonna enjoy it because it's a major throwback, and we'll talk about some of the subject matter that he addresses in this clip. So watch this real quick.
It's a new season here on the Henry Rollins Show, and we're so glad to be back with you. It's been a while since we've gotten together, and in that time, a lot has happened, but very little has changed. Republicans did get their asses handed to them, and they can all kiss my ass and say hello to Madam Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi.
See, this is when Pelosi first got the nod, and so everyone was super excited that it was the first woman speaker and everything. So this aired in, let me check my notes here, April 13th of 2007. Let's continue.
Evangelical heavyweight and New Life Church founder Ted Haggard resigns his post after admitting to buying crystal methamphetamine and congressing with a male prostitute.
So what he gets into here is such a great trip down memory lane, because all the conservatives right now that are freaking out about Epstein and Hollywood pedophiles, just listen.
Haggard chalks it up to sexual immorality and is currently being rehabilitated. Republican from Florida, Mark Foley's taste for teenage boys is exposed as his sexually explicit emails to congressional pages comes to light. White House
Do you remember that? Mark Foley, the Republican senator who was like trying to get with congressional pages or was banging them. I don't remember.
Press Secretary Tony Snow characterizes the emails as merely overly friendly and nothing to be worried about, as we are all left to store that information in the pedophile. Hey, Bush, enjoying Nixonian approval ratings, delivered his flatline no news.
So this is when Bush was still president. This is right before Obama got elected.
State of the Union address that he could have delivered last year, which brings me to my point. It's been another year and not a lot has changed. The invasion of Iraq continues to drain America of resources while it enriches the coffers of KBR and other crony corporations, kills and hideously mangles brave soldiers and innocent civilians unceasingly, and creates more enemies worldwide daily. The Bush administration didn't care much for what the Iraq Study Group had to say and sent more troops surging into Baghdad. Katrina survivors are still displaced, and no one in government seems all that concerned. The always eager Disney girl, Britney Spears, took time away from her hectic schedule of endangering her children and getting rid of her intellectually malnourished husband to expose her pudenda to the motor drives of half-interested paparazzi cameras, giving us all way too much personal information.
He needs to fire one of his writers for pudenda.
Saddam Hussein, hanged by amateurs. His half-brother Barzan Ibrahim, also hanged, loses his head to poor execution technique as mankind hits a new low. Will anything ever change for the better? I don't have an answer for that, but what I do know is that unless we push with the utmost urgency for progress, there will only be more of the same. And that is not only unacceptable, it is also unsustainable. We are going to have a great season here on IFC, and I hope you join me, our musical and sit-down guests, as we go uncut, uncensored, and stick it to these motherfuckers nonstop.
Now, remember everything he just said. So I went down the wormhole looking for, footage of Henry Rollins supporting the Ukraine war. And what I found, the most prominent video clip of him, was a Joe Rogan episode. Now, this is where it gets interesting. The Joe Rogan episode that Henry Rollins did was followed by an appearance by Jimmy Dore. And so I started watching this Henry Rollins clip, and the YouTube algorithm recommended me this Jimmy Dore clip of Jimmy Dore talking to Joe Rogan about Henry Rollins. And this is far better than the Henry Rollins clip, because let me sum up the Henry Rollins clip for you. He basically tells this story about his dad smacking him because he asked his dad if he was a communist because his dad was an economist. And that's just like the visceral reaction to being asked if he was a communist that his dad had, was just to smack him upside the head as a kid. So that really shocked him. And then he goes on to say that Trump was being used by Putin, and he actually isn't as unhinged as a lot of the liberals are with the Trump thing. He's measured about it, I think, which is cool. But all the stuff he says is ridiculous, because if you just heard what he said, 10 years ago, when before Obama got elected, when Bush was president, he was calling out profiteering by KBR and Dick Cheney. And now he's supporting the same type of profiteering by actually the same people, largely, in the Ukraine war, because a Democrat sold it to him. And this is the whole thread that I'm trying to draw here with the fake news thing, is how good our news media has been at tricking people as smart. Henry Rollins is a smart guy. I read a lot of his books as a kid. Obviously a big Black Flag fan, obviously a big fan of Rollins band. So it's disappointing to see guys like him and Jello Biafra and Al Jorgensen, heroes of mine who were politically active rockers, be duped by this stuff. So anyway, let's watch this Jimmy Dore clip, because this is absolutely fucking incredible. Trip down memory lane, and let's just watch it. Listen to this.
We're getting emotional in the green room, listening to Henry Rollins talk about Putin. You're about to quote Chomsky.
Yes. So
what was that?
I just caught the end of it. I went in the green room, and everybody loves Henry Rollins, right? And
except Henry. That's why it's so good.
Maybe
he's constantly grinding.
Yeah. But he was doing that thing about, Putin. There was a journalist who wrote a book about him, ended up dead. Putin's a bad guy. He's a bad guy. As opposed to who?
Well, no, but you mean he's definitely a bad guy, right?
So one of the things I also just thought about is Henry Rollins precedes this hate for Putin with the story about communism, not recognizing the fact that Putin is not communist. Russia is not a communist country and hasn't been since the fall of the USSR.
We all agree that.
Yeah,
of course. But I mean, just because other people are also bad guys, it doesn't negate his point of Putin being a bad guy. What he was saying is just that it's very bizarre that the Republicans, these people that were, at the forefront of the Cold War, these ones who are, these are the people that remember Khrushchev banging on the desk, saying we'll bury you with Kennedy. And these people are now they're whitewashing Putin. They're essentially trying to paint out Putin to be a good guy because Trump is in this position where he's trying to be friends with this guy.
So again, this is where things get dicey, because people act like conservatives are praising Putin and praising Russia when I mean, some of them are, let's be honest. But the real sentiment here isn't that Putin is a great guy, just that why can't we be friends with Russia? What have they done that's so much worse than the United States that makes them a demon in the world as compared to someone like I'll let Jimmy handle this. Just listen.
So well, here's the quote I wanted to send you, right?
Please.
So that whole thing, if Nuremberg laws were applied, then every post-war American president would have been hanged, says Noam Chomsky. Putin kills journalists. We just torture ours. So, I mean, Chelsea Manning is a whistleblower. Barack Obama tortured her. So we have our president, we have presidents and vice presidents who are legit war criminals that walk around today. They had a torture program. Okay, so Barack Obama got a peace prize, and then he had a kill list. A peace prize winner with a kill list, a drone kill list. Would you keep the kill list next to the peace prize? Where do you keep those two things? Are they anyway? So this
not only that, some of the people that were killed were American citizens with no due process.
And so nobody has a problem with Trump being buddies with Benjamin Netanyahu, who is a psychopathic maniac who shoots with precision medics who are.
So this is why this is so good, because this clip is from August of 2018. This is from like 5 years ago. And this is why Jimmy is so beloved, because he has integrity. He's consistent about this stuff.
Trying to help people and nurses and journalists, by the way.
But some Israeli troops have done that.
Israeli troops do that.
That's a really depressing thing. I had Abby Martin on, and she sort of illuminated that whole situation. I mean, I really didn't know how bad it was, nor did she until she went over there.
Right.
And, just experiencing what it's like. It's crazy that people that went through the Holocaust, that realized the cost of dehumanizing an entire race of people, now are capable, at least some of them are capable of doing that to the Palestinians.
Yeah, it's kind of mind-blowing. So to hear, and I have friends who do that. Everyone's doing this, right? Everyone's getting caught up in this hysteria. That's why there's a word called hysteria, because it happens and we're in one. And, what I like is what Noam Chomsky said about this Russia hysteria that's happening. He said,
the thing to remember here, too, is this all predates the Ukraine war. The Trump-Russia hysteria was a complete psyop ginned up to garner support for the Ukraine war, which is now crumbling because of Israel.
If you care about effects on our pristine elections, which he said very sarcastically.
That was kind of sometimes I misspeak when I do these things. I watch them back later and I go, oh, wow, that's not what I meant to say. The Ukraine war is not crumbling because of Israel, but the attention of the mass media has shifted because of that.
He said, if you care about what's affecting our pristine elections, the Russia gate is the last place I would look. And the first place he would look, if you're worried about foreign control of or influence on our government, he said he would look to Israel. They're the ones. Benjamin Netanyahu came here and addressed the joint session of Congress without the permission or invitation of the president. Remember when Obama was president, he did that? He did that. That's a guy coming here to tell our guys how to vote in direct defiance of our president, and everyone embraced him. Can you imagine if Putin did that? Putin came to America and addressed a joint session of Congress against the will of the president? So this idea that somehow because Putin is a bad guy, Trump shouldn't have a good friendship with him is BS. The guys who are really influencing our government here are Benjamin Netanyahu, Saudi Arabia. Trump opened 8 businesses in Saudi Arabia during the election, and no one gives a crap about any of that stuff because they're our friends. Saudi Arabia, by the way, just bombed a school today. School bus, 29 kids dead. So, I just retweeted that from Sarah Abdullah. So why would they do that? Because they're in Yemen. They're bombing. We're committing genocide in Yemen right now. So we're helping Saudi Arabia commit a genocide in Yemen. And the way we're doing it is they're doing a thing called siege warfare, which is
that made Israel jealous. Sorry, I didn't mean that. That was for entertainment purposes only.
War crime. And in fact, they just prosecuted someone a few months ago at The Hague for it. So, since we're doing it and we're the enforcers, and Saudi Arabia is on the Human Rights Council. So it's everything's a joke now, right? So we're past it, where it's a farce. We're living in this farce. And so when I see a guy that I love, like Henry Rollins, saying stuff like, oh, Putin's the special kind of bad, I just quote back Chomsky. We have nothing. We have legit war criminals just one presidency away.
Do you think he's a step removed from that, though? I mean, he'll assassinate journalists in his own
Rogan always plays devil's advocate.
country. Criticize him.
Right now, we're trying to assassinate Julian Assange. Right now, our
do you think we're trying to
government.
assassinate him? Is that what they're trying to do?
Yes, they're trying to kill that guy. Yes, they want that guy dead. Hillary Clinton was like, can't we drone that guy? Can't we kill him?
Yeah, she really did say that.
Yeah, she really did say that
Yeah.
after she just got done killing Gaddafi and then
Yeah.
laughed about it.
Yeah, that's we've played that several times.
Yeah.
We came, we saw, he died. The fact that any human being would ever do that and by the way, the way he died.
So remember what Rollins just said about the new low for humanity earlier? That was before. He obviously didn't hear about this.
That's some dark shit. They watched and they stabbed him in the asshole.
Right.
And there's a video of them stabbing him in the asshole while he's standing there, just confused, not knowing what to do. And this guy's jamming a sword up his ass.
Have you seen the video?
Yes.
Oh, I have not seen that.
Oh my God, it's awful. You want to see it?
No.
The video of them capturing him is fascinating because it's a guy who has lived with an iron fist, controlled these people,
Right.
been a brutal dictator, been a horrible monster of a human being. Now all of a sudden these rebels have captured him, and they can't believe they have him, and they're shooting him and stabbing him, and then eventually they have his body and they parade his body around after they've killed him. But there's video of him. You should look at it for just a moment because it's so stunning to see him captured and alive, and can't believe that these rebels have him. That it's not even like,
Yeah.
you know.
I have seen video of him captured and that look on his
Freaking
face, so I
murder
know what you're
one.
talking about.
Just the guys.
Anyway, you get the idea. The news media does a great job of selling us these wars. And just as a quick side note, I want to share this with you. The other day, I happened to be on another account that I still follow TYT on, and I happened to see their live stream numbers. And, you know, it's not like I can talk shit because it's not like a ton of people are watching my live stream, but in comparison to like Do Dissidents, who gets like, there's like 4,000 or 5,000 people on Do Dissidents live stream, and Jimmy's the other day was like 7,500, and that's just like what I could see. You know, I might have gotten past that at some point, but these guys have 124 people. Oh, sorry, 142. 142 people watching their live stream these days. And again, it's because Jimmy has integrity. He's saying the same things he's always said. He didn't change his views because when he got some cash, like these guys did. And this is why they have 142 people watching their live stream, and Do Dissidents has 5K, you know, and Jimmy has 7,500 or, you know, 7.5K, however you want to say it. So anyway, the way that the media sells this stuff, they've been doing it for years, and it's so depressing that a guy like Henry Rollins doesn't remember some of this stuff. So I'm just going to show you this real quick throwback to the New York Times selling the Iraq War. Watch this.
Now know that Saddam has resumed his efforts to acquire nuclear weapons.
So when Cheney said that, I got on the phone to people, and one person said to me, somebody who watched proliferation as their job, said the vice president is lying.
On the basis of his intelligence sources, Landais wrote there was little evidence to back up the vice president's claims. But the story Landais wrote didn't run in New York or Washington. Knight Ridder, remember, has no outlet in either city. So it couldn't compete with a blockbuster that appeared 2 days later on the front page of the nation's paper of record with the familiar byline. Quoting anonymous administration officials, the Times reported that Saddam Hussein had launched a worldwide hunt for materials to make an atomic bomb using specially designed aluminum tubes. And there, on Meet the Press that same morning, was Vice President Cheney.
Tubes. There's a story in the New York Times this morning. This is, and I want to attribute to the Times. I don't want to talk about, obviously, specific intelligence sources, but.
Now, ordinarily, information like the aluminum tubes wouldn't appear in it. It was top secret intelligence. And the vice president and the national security advisor would not be allowed to talk about this on the Sunday talk shows. But it appeared that morning in the New York Times, and therefore they were able to talk about it.
It's not classified
now public
anymore.
that, in fact, he has been seeking to acquire, and we have been able to intercept and prevent him from acquiring through this particular channel, the kinds of tubes that are necessary to build a centrifuge. And the centrifuge is required to take low-grade uranium and enhance it into highly enriched uranium, which is what you have to have in order to build a bomb.
Did you see that performance?
I did.
What did you think?
I thought it's remarkable.
Why?
Remarkable. You leak a story and then you quote the story? I mean, that's a remarkable thing to do.
They don't even have to do that anymore. The press just says whatever they tell them. So I got one more little snippet for you here. And this is one, the quality of the clip isn't great, but this is another one that I'm sure that Henry Rollins hasn't seen. And it sums up the Ukraine thing well.
The whole U.S. government feels that way. There is division on this, but the neoconservative element wants very much to change the strategic dynamic in Eastern Europe. The neocons are very smart people, and they've been at this for a long time. They came in around the issue of propaganda. They studied how to create hot buttons for the American people. They had this experience when they were getting the American people to get excited about Central America back in the 1980s.
Sandinista regular army, the ground force is being equipped now with Russian artillery.
And they've been applying those same strategies ever since. They remain very dedicated to achieving their goals. They still want to get rid of certain governments. They wanted regime change in Syria, for instance, regime change in Iran. They're very skilled at this, and they have a lot of allies now inside the news media, inside the government, and that means that they can do a lot to control the narrative of any story.
I think in America these days, we have somehow told ourselves that there are a lot of ways of dealing with these problems other than hard power. Vladimir Putin cares about hard power.
The neoconservatives can now demonize a leader of a country. That sells with the American people. So you don't just sort of argue a policy. You attack the leader. So the neoconservatives became very skilled at picking out leaders, finding their ugly traits, and then highlighting them. Yanukovych, you might say, was a rather clunky political leader, but you make him into a devil. He's totally corrupt, and he's evil, and he wants to kill people in the Maidan, these wonderful white-hatted demonstrators. So you've got a black hat versus white hat. And then you keep repeating that basic scenario, and it works with the American people.
You've got to realize what Vladimir Putin is. He's an old KGB colonel that wants to restore the Russian Empire.
You make them into demons, and the American people find that the way they can understand the world. Once that happens, it's very difficult for journalists or anyone else to say, you know, hold it, that guy, he's got more of a gray hat than a white hat or a black hat. And if you say that, you suddenly are, you're a Yanukovych apologist or you're a Putin apologist, and then the attacks come on to the person saying it, the journalist, the academic, or whoever.
And guys like Henry Rollins, because of the Obama years, you know, do not recognize what's going on here. And I'm going to end this segment by showing you just one last little lovely snippet. And it's from Bill Maher.
The eternal folly that wars are won quickly, which we learned twice that wasn't true recently. And I think that the Russian engagement in Ukraine is going to last for many, 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 many years to come, weakening that state considerably. And it's terrifying. I don't know.
Okay. A school principal at a Florida...
Many, 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 many years. So that's our segment on how terrible the media is and how they have a long track record of supporting every war until it's too late. And you see it happening. You see the cycle rebooting here with the whole Middle East thing. You know, we just had it happen last year with Ukraine, and you know, people are like is it the dog from that movie Up? Squirrel? I think it's Up. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. The dog with the short attention span that sees a squirrel and turns its head every time. That's the United States right now, and has been for a long time. So one of the things that I thought was interesting is that George Bush was a cheerleader. And apparently so was Ronald Reagan. But it makes a lot of sense. And it's funny because I remember when George Bush was president and people act like Trump is some dummy, it's like the dumbest guy to ever walk. And I remember George Bush, the cheerleader. And so I want to take you on a little just quick trip. This is not going to take very long, but I want to take you on a quick trip down memory lane with some Bushisms from the war cheerleader.
Single mother with 2 children, which is the toughest job in America as far as I'm concerned. And you're working hard to put food on your family.
Those who think that they can say we're only going to have a stimulus package, but let's forget tax relief, underestimate. Just making sure you were paying attention. You were. I know the human being and fish can coexist peacefully. The response.
That's my favorite one.
Have got to end in order for us to get the framework, the groundwork, not framework, the groundwork to discuss a framework for peace, to lay that. All right. We are not.
Oh, they didn't show the golf swing.
With Muslims. We don't have a beef with Muslims. We want to be friends with Muslims and Muslim children. We're fighting evil people. It's important for the boys and girls of Thurgood Marshall to know that we're fighting evil with good. And one way to fight evil with good is you can help by writing letters to boys and girls your age.
Guy was brilliant. Guy was brilliant. So just to real briefly touch on the Israel-Palestine thing, the protests, it seems like, are actually starting to get through. And I've got just, like I said, I don't go too far into the weeds on this because it's a long history. But I mean, my take is simple. You know, I listen to people who are Jewish, like the Due Dissidence guys and Max Blumenthal and Katie Halper talk about it. And, you know, the whole anti-Semitism thing is out of control. But this clip right here, Max and Anya kind of show Anthony Blinken basically dealing with this protest. And it's Code Pink who, you know, whatever you think about them, a lot of people say a lot of bad things about Medea Benjamin. And I don't think she's the worst person ever. I don't think she's the best person ever. But she's brave as shit. And I don't know if this was all her. The guys on Due Dissidence were saying that it was kind of like an organic protest. I don't know if it was a Code Pink thing, but whatever the case, the bloody hands
was just really said it all. I mean, and these are just grassroots activists.
The president and I have both stressed the need for Israel to
You're the terrorist. Look at his face.
I love it.
To operate by the rule.
He's so upset. Look at that image. Look at that image.
It's great. Whoever came up with that idea was a genius.
It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful.
So this was not even like, you know, a professional activist. It's someone who wanted to come in there
So I was saying the
out
president
of
and I have both
pure
stressed
conscience.
in our conversations with
Calling Tony Blinken a
to
terrorist.
operate by the law of war and
So it's not Code Pink. That's great.
in accordance with international humanitarian law.
And listen to what he's saying. We're going to cooperate with Israel through the laws of war. They always say this, the laws of war. It's like the rules-based order. What are they talking about there? Nothing. It literally means nothing when they say the laws of war. We had Liam Cosgrove, our Capitol Hill reporter, go to the Pentagon and ask the spokesman there, John Ryder, what laws of war is Israel following? What laws of war are you asking them to abide by? And he could not and would not answer the question.
So the guest that they have there is this guy, Dan Kovalik, and he's the guy who approached John Fetterman recently and was pushed out the door by one of John Fetterman's hired guards for asking him questions about Israel as a constituent. So cheers to that guy. But yeah, I think to Max and Anya's point, that imagery right there is brilliant. And I mean, literally, what are we doing? What, no one, and I'm one of those people too who my views aren't really that radical. I don't think we shouldn't support Israel. I don't think that Israel doesn't have a right to exist or any of that kind of stuff. I don't think Max or any of those guys do either. But they've seen firsthand what Gaza looks like, and I haven't. So that's one of the reasons I don't like to comment too much on this situation. I've never been to the Middle East, and people who live in Israel or who live in Gaza have a much more informed take on what's happening there. As we know, the media distorts everything ridiculously. So, but it is good to see this kind of thing is happening, and these kind of things are getting through. So it's it's one of the last. I mean, that's freedom of speech. That's First Amendment right there. It's one of the last things we have. It feels like that is slipping away to some degree. They talk about the Capitol Police working with the DOJ and the DHS now to quell these protests, and that all of that kind of like interweaving, not Capitol Police, campus police at colleges, and all of that interweaving. Guess what? That's a result of January 6th. So that's the other crazy thing about this Israel thing is it's October 7th. It's so obvious the stage management that they're doing is similar to what with the January 6th stage management, where they have, some produced narrative that they're putting out. And, I'm not saying that the attacks were real or anything like that. I'm just saying that the way that the press has handled it and the way that the media handles it is very suspicious. As always, the point of everything I've been talking about tonight. So moving on, speaking of our precious democracy and January 6th, I happened to catch this clip that really got my attention, and it's about a lawsuit. So, with all the stuff that's going on with Trump, what's very clear to a lot of people is that they're trying to accuse him of mounting an insurrection so they can use a clause in the Constitution to basically get him off the ballot, to say that he can't run for president because he is a insurrectionist. And there's no evidence of that whatsoever. I mean, if you look at the actual facts of that day, Trump told everyone to be civil and that the police were their friends. So it's crazy because it seems like that's one of the reasons they kicked him off Twitter, is because they didn't want people to be able to see the things that he had said, so they could distort the narrative around it. And anyway, this clip kind of confirms everything everyone is saying about what they're trying to do to get Trump out of the race for president, because it's looking more and more like he's going to be the Republican nominee and he's probably going to win again. But watch this. This is out of control. I couldn't believe this when I saw it.
On the merits.
John Anthony Castro is a GOP hopeful from Texas. He wants former President Donald Trump off the primary ballot and has filed 27 federal lawsuits, including here in New Hampshire, to do so.
And the question is whether Donald J. Trump provided aid and comfort to an insurrection, which we all know that he did, and the exact process to disqualify him from being on the ballot.
Castro argues that the insurrection clause of the 14th Amendment should block the former president from running again. And because he shouldn't be on the ballot, he's taking votes away from Castro.
Basically a reduction in votes. I lose votes. And that may be 5 votes, that may be 5,000 votes. We're not really sure.
Our position is that even if the court were to do what he is asking them to do and strike President Trump from the ballot, it's not going to have any effect on his campaign at all, because there are other candidates that votes would go to.
Trump's lawyers looked at the credibility of Castro as a candidate. They point to his campaign, saying he has no offices, employees, or political ads here in New Hampshire or anywhere in the country. And
So that is suspect right there. It's interesting that that's all that they say. Trump's lawyer said that. Like, the reporter themselves didn't do an investigation and go, hey, this guy doesn't even have a campaign, but he's filing lawsuits against Trump in all these different states to get him off the ballot. That's kind of odd, isn't it? And he's a GOP congressional candidate. Yeah, it seems very odd to me. But again, it's proof positive. And this is the other thing that I watched this clip of Elon Musk talking, and he was wrong about a lot of stuff. He was saying that the Democrats are the party of unions, which not really. But he did say that they were the party of trial lawyers, and that's true. If you look at the Democrats have a very large legal donor base, and that's all available on the Center for Public Integrity website. And when you see stuff like this clip here, I forget that everything's reversed, so I'm like pointing in the wrong direction. When you see stuff like this clip here, where this guy is literally like some upstart candidate with the backing to file all these lawsuits in different states to get Trump off the ballot, it just proves positive that what they're doing to him is attacking him through the legal system to try and, which is banana republic shit. Well, if the roles were reversed, this is all the stuff that people said Trump would do to other people. And the reality is, I mean, at least someone like Trump is equipped to do battle with these people, because he's a guy who with some financial resources and a guy who's been in court for years and years and fought legal battles for years and years as part of his, business conquests and all that. So, it's very interesting, our precious democracy is at stake. Yeah, very precious, isn't it? When you can sue people off a ballot because you don't, want to run against them. That doesn't seem very, call me crazy, but that doesn't seem very democratic to me. So this last segment is a banger, I gotta admit. The first thing we're gonna do is talk about this Li Fong article, because in current politics, Matt Gaetz is kind of the guy, the populist du jour. And I don't know if you know this or not, but there was a guy on the left a while back who was a lot like Matt Gaetz, who had the balls to say crazy things. And I couldn't find this clip of him. There's one clip of him. We'll get into it. His name's Alan Grayson. But there's a clip of him talking about carbon. This guy's like, carbon doesn't. He's arguing with this GOP congressman about climate change. And the congressman is Dana Rohrabacher from San Diego, who is a total like fossil fuel guy. And Rohrabacher is trying to argue that carbon doesn't hurt you. And Grayson goes, "What if you don't think carbon doesn't hurt you? Why don't you just put a bag over your head and breathe?" That's the kind of gusto we need more of from the left. But to start this segment off, really, I wanted to read this article from Li Fong, and the actual headline for the article is "Lobbyist Knives Out for Matt Gaetz." And it's a little bit of older article. It's from earlier in October. It's from last month, but check this out. DC lobbyists and dark money groups tied to Silicon Valley are seeking to avenge the ouster of Speaker Kevin McCarthy, the guy that they installed. Isn't that interesting? So here's what Lee says. He says, Rep. Matt Gaetz The leader of the rebellion that ousted Speaker Kevin McCarthy this week has long enraged the Beltway establishment. Gaetz has blazed an unusual path, frequently partnering with House Democrats against powerful special interest groups. He backed regulation to weaken the power of Silicon Valley technology giants and fought to restrict weapons transfers to Ukraine and Saudi Arabia. In a message posted earlier today, Gaetz floated a sweeping ethics reform package as a key demand moving forward. He offered to partner with Rep. Ro Khanna, Democrat of California, on legislation to ban congressional stock trading, institute a 12-year term limit for lawmakers, and ban lobbyists and PAC donations in exchange for his support to increase the threshold for removing the Speaker of the House. That's a concession that he also won at the beginning of this year when they held out their vote for McCarthy, by the way. Remember, force the vote? I don't even have to get into it. Jimmy can do a victory lap. The motion to vacate change has been demanded by GOP officials concerned about future political volatility, but industry insiders are pushing back. So you may or may not have known that about your boy Matt Gaetz, that he was doing this. So the next slide, let's read the next slide here. Cesar Conda, a former aide to Dick Cheney. Imagine that. Imagine that. A former aide to Dick Cheney works as a lobbyist. Cesar Conda, a former aide to Dick Cheney, whose defense industry lobbying firm Navigators Global helps Ukrainian government secure American funds, scorned Gaetz as an arsonist and endorsed a call for lawmakers to expel the Florida lawmaker from the Republican conference. Americans for Tax Reform, a dark money group funded in part by Amazon, Google, and Meta, the parent company of Facebook, unveiled a radio and digital advertising campaign against Gaetz yesterday, accusing him of spending too much time chasing TV cameras. Following Matt Gaetz anywhere is a fool's errand, decried John Feehery, a former GOP press aide who now serves as a corporate lobbyist. McCarthy's allies have similarly fumed and called for retribution. Rep. Austin Scott of Georgia has called for Gaetz and the 7 other House Republicans in support of the McCarthy ouster to be stripped of committee assignments. Isn't that interesting? Newt Gingrich, in a column for the Washington Post, wrote that Gaetz is destroying the House GOP's ability to govern and called for his expulsion from the party. Gingrich has since appeared on Fox News and other media platforms to call Gaetz and other insurgent lawmakers traitors. Jake Sherman, a reporter known for close ties to McCarthy, circulated a claim from a GOP source suggesting Gaetz's request for $50 million in advanced helicopter training system hangar in his district would be snubbed. Opponents of Gaetz appear also to be coalescing around an effort to use a long-standing ethics inquiry against him. The New York Times this week resurfaced a 2-year-old House Ethics Committee investigation into Gaetz over a variety of misconduct allegations, including sexual misconduct, which the DOJ dropped. Earlier this year, the Justice Department announced that it would not bring charges against Gaetz over similar claims because of a lack of evidence. Gaetz has maintained that both inquiries are politically motivated. Obviously. I don't know if it's Gaetz or Getz, but I'm saying Gaetz. Yesterday, after the ethics accusations were recirculated among reporters, Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, Republican of Oklahoma, told CNN that Gaetz was known to brag about his sexual escapades on the floor of the House of Representatives. He bragged about how he would crush ED medicine and chase it with energy drinks so he could go all night. This is obviously before he got married, Mullen said. I am the most investigated man in the United States Congress, Gaetz told reporters earlier this week. It seems that the Ethics Committee's interest in me waxes and wanes based on my relationship with the Speaker. The Florida lawmaker has redrawn the political calculus in Washington with his spirited challenge to party leaders and to politicians. I take no lecture on asking patriotic Americans to weigh in and contribute to this fight. Those who would grovel and bend knee for the lobbyists and special interests who own our leadership, who have hollowed out this town, thundered Gaetz on Tuesday, shortly before the vote to remove McCarthy began. The future leadership of the House remains unclear. Not anymore. We know now it's that Johnson guy, Mike Johnson. but many of Gaetz's demands, including ethics reforms and a pause in U.S. military support for Ukraine, are now much more likely. So I thought that was really good, and it reminded me of a guy that I used to think very highly of named Alan Grayson. Now, if you don't remember who Alan Grayson is, I already kind of introed him, but he's the guy who told the GOP guy to put a bag over his head if he didn't think carbon was a problem. But he also, he's most famous for the healthcare debate. During the healthcare debate, he said the GOP plan is for, if you get sick, for you to die quickly. And that was accurate at the time, very accurate, because when we were trying to pass healthcare, they had nothing. And then when Obama was president, all they did was obstruct. They just, tried to block everything and make him. Mitch McConnell said himself, he's like, we're going to make this guy a one-term president. He failed, but hey, they tried. They tried their best. And at the end of the day, they got everything Republicans could possibly dream of from Obama under the guise of intellectualism and identity politics and all that great stuff. But this guy, Alan Grayson, was Matt Gaetz before there was Matt Gaetz, also from Florida, ironically. Or maybe not. Maybe Florida just produces this kind of testosterone. But let's watch this first clip of Grayson on Chris Hayes. And let me see, what year was this? I think this one is like 2010. It may have the date on it. It doesn't.
Republicans have in mind for you, America. That's the Republicans' health care plan. But I think that the Republicans understand that that plan isn't always going to work. It's not a foolproof plan. So the Republicans have a backup plan in case you do get sick. If you get sick in America, this is what the Republicans want you to do. If you get sick, America, the Republican health care plan is this: die quickly. That's right. The Republicans want you to die quickly if you get sick.
That was Congressman Alan Grayson, who was best known during his first term in Congress for his blistering but cable news-friendly attacks on his political opponents. That didn't go over too well in his home district, where he was unseated by a Republican challenger after one term by 18 points. Thanks to redistricting, Grayson was...
So Chris just answered my question. This is when he got reelected in the later 2010s. I think it's like 2012 when Obama was
able to run in a much more Democratic district outside Orlando in 2012, and he won, sending him back to Congress for a second try. In a fascinating new profile, Slate's Dave Weigel pronounced Grayson the most effective member of the House.
Good old Dave Weigel.
What emerges is the picture of a former firebrand who's making his mark as a quiet, forceful, and incredibly effective legislator. Since returning to Congress, Grayson has launched dozens of under-the-radar campaigns to win over his Republican colleagues. Grayson gets their support on amendments to pieces of legislation that accomplish small but concrete progressive goals. He's already passed 31 amendments in committee this year. In one instance, Grayson attached a ban on funding for unmanned aerial vehicles, also known as drones, to the Homeland Security bill. This is the kind of thing...
Look at how old that is. It's like that ban never made it.
thing he's getting Republican votes on. Right now, Grayson is working the chamber, trying to win support for an amendment that would restrict NSA surveillance. He says he only needs 4 more Republicans. It's all pretty impressive.
Restrict NSA surveillance. Oh, if only Grayson could see us now.
In the do-nothing Congress, the lawmaker who is actually doing something is the last guy you'd expect. Joining me now is Congressman Alan Grayson, Democrat from Florida. And you're chuckling at the last guy you expect, I imagine, because you think you would expect that you would do something. But Congressman, my question to you is, this really does see an Alan Grayson 2.0, that you learn things from your first term in Congress and that you are taking a different approach. Am I misreading it? Are you just the same guy? Is the approach the same, or did you really learn something from that first go-around?
Well, remember that the only bipartisan accomplishment of substance in the 111th Congress during my first term was when I joined with Republican Ron Paul to pass a bill to audit the Federal Reserve, something that had not been done independently for 100 years. He lined up the Republicans, I lined up the Democrats. I picked up a bill that had languished for 26 years, not even gotten the committee hearing, and we got it passed. So this is a winning formula.
So you've been going through bills, looking at actually what comes out of the majority, looking at amendments that have passed before but have died along the way, and going and talking to your Republican colleagues. I want to play an interview with you did with Rachel Maddow in 2009 about the Republicans. Take a listen.
The Republicans have nothing. They simply stick their heels in, they dig their heels in, they won't let anything get done time and time again. It's not just the health bill, it's everything.
This is why he was so hated, as you can tell.
They simply block everything. That's not what America sent Congress to do.
But he sounds a lot like Matt Gaetz, doesn't he?
More or less my understanding of the current Republican majority. Do I have it wrong?
Well, the fact is that we're able to win just by picking off 18 of them. And what we do is we frame things that they find very difficult to say no to. Now, they don't always look at it the same way that we do. You know, for instance,
This is kind of brilliant. This is something that progressives today could learn
I
from.
introduced an amendment recently that they considered to be a states' rights amendment, and Democrats considered to be an environmental amendment. So
It's all in the framing.
we picked off just enough Republicans to get to a tie vote. That's the kind of thing you can do. I think that most members of Congress look at legislation like the blind men and the elephant. They think of the bill as whatever the part is that they're touching that they can't see. And we take advantage of that. We take advantage of that through framing it so that Republicans see something good in our amendments and Democrats see something good in our amendments too, and therefore we end up with practical results that foster progressive goals.
If you go and talk to your Republican colleagues when you're trying to get these 18 members to come over and vote for an amendment you're proposing, do they look at you and say, oh, that's the guy who said our health care plan was die quickly and I saw him on MSNBC saying nasty things about us? Is there a kind of reputational gap you need to overcome?
Listen, they could call me the guy who calls them callous, bigoted tools, but the fact is that they vote their districts. They vote what they regard as in their self-interest, and every once in a while they vote for what's good for America as they see it. So if we can explain to them why something's good for their districts, why something is good for America, I have an audience.
So the big question, though, here is...
That's a good way to look at it. I mean, he can still be bombastic and talk shit, but when it comes time to get work done, he can see these people as human beings.
Okay, getting some stuff into, and some of these amendments are very interesting. No Department of Homeland Security cannot receive funds for programs that infringe on the Constitution. Seems like a sensible amendment, given that everyone's sworn to uphold it. No government contract can be awarded to corporations convicted of fraud, which also seems like a fantastic idea. Department of Defense must have been a report on vulnerabilities in the military supply chain. My question to you is,
skips that last one.
Is there a way to transform the little model that you found on these
Elon's getting that sweet public-private partnership money for SpaceX
kind of discrete goals into something that can say get the immigration bill through this House of Representatives that seems massively hostile to it?
I think so. I think that the Republicans, some of the Republicans can look at an immigration bill and they say, this is a bill that makes our borders secure. Other Republicans can look at an immigration bill and they can say to themselves, this is a bill that forces people who are not paying taxes now, not paying their fair share of taxes, to pay taxes. I think this is a winning formula for getting things done in Washington, and we badly need it. You know, many people now run successfully for Congress by saying that nothing can get done in Washington. I think those people personally, they shouldn't run for Congress. But in fact, the public is convinced that nothing can get done. We have to show that things can get done, and that's what we're doing by working this way and getting so many amendments passed that promote progressive goals.
Congressman Alan Grayson, Florida.
That was 10 years ago. Over 10 years ago, really. Almost 12 years ago now. So that's crazy. That's crazy. But I want to show you one more Grayson goodie before we end this this segment here. One more little Grayson goodie for you. This guy introduced a bill called the War is Making You Poor Act. I'm not even kidding about this. This is absolutely brilliant. And I hope that progressives can find some of this energy moving forward because we need it badly.
Jim is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, today I introduce H.R. 5353, the War is Making You Poor Act. The War is Making You Poor Act does three things. First, it requires the administration to carry out the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan with only, that's only, the $549 billion set forth in the President's budget for defense spending, without the additional $159 billion the President has asked for the sake of the so-called emergency war, which now stretches on to 9 years in one case and 7 years in the other.
Sounds like a fiscal conservative.
My view is that $549 billion is enough for these wars or any other wars the President plans to engage in. What this does second...
Oh, this sweet, sweet man. If only he knew how many more years these wars went on and how many more trillions were spent.
Secondly is that it takes the money that is saved from the war separate allocation, and it uses that for a very important purpose with our economy the way it is and people in America suffering. It takes that money, or 90% of it, and it uses that to make $35,000 of everyone's income in America tax-free and $70,000 for married couples. Let's be clear about that. Let's be clear about what I said. With the money that is being saved by the War is Making You Poor Act, we can give $35,000 of every American's income. We can make that tax-free, and $70,000 for married couples. And in addition to that, it takes the remaining money and reduces the federal deficit and the federal debt. I think those are three things, all of which need to be done. This bill brings them all together. Let's start with the fact that the administration has asked for $549 billion to basically keep the lights on at the Pentagon, and beyond that asked for another $159 billion for the wars. Let's see exactly how much that means.
So you can see why this guy isn't in Congress anymore.
On this chart here, you can see that the U.S. military spending is as much as the entire rest of the world combined. As much as the entire rest of the world combined. And in fact, the ones who come in second are our NATO allies in Europe, who I don't expect to be attacking us anytime soon. Beyond that, you have to go all the way down to China to get to any country that is conceivably ever going to be a military enemy, and we outspend China by over 5 to 1.
So this right here is the energy that modern progressives need to have. This guy is basically trolling the military-industrial complex by writing a bill that's like, hey, you guys are spending wildly. Why don't we take some of this money and give it back to and cut people's taxes from it? And I just want to show you real quick before we end this segment, this comment from the YouTube video. Man, I love Grayson, and I consider myself a libertarian Republican. He is serious. I love him. He never lies about the numbers and gives you the money person number. And he outlines how we outspend the world in defense spending, which is, and I didn't get the rest, but this is how you do it. You bring people together, and he talked about it. The way he laid it out in that Chris Hayes clip is so brilliant. You frame these things, even though they're the same issue, you take it to the Republicans as a, hey, we're going to cut taxes. This War is Making You Poor Act is a great example. I hope that Matt Gaetz, we need to start a campaign to convince Matt Gaetz to revive the War is Making You Poor Act, because it combines two things that the current Republicans could get behind. One is, more oversight or cutting down on the spending on the Ukraine war, but also it gives Americans a tax cut. It gives families a tax cut. Like, imagine that if people who made $35,000 a year got that tax free, that would be amazing. It would do wonders for the economy, but it's not going to happen because, as we saw earlier, knives out for Alan Grayson. I'm sure that the lobbyists made sure they got rid of this guy real quick, and that's what they're going to do to anyone like Matt Gaetz who makes any kind of progress whatsoever, as small as it is, moves the ball in the direction of, cleaning things up a little bit. We are in a very strange place in the United States. And anyway, Alan Grayson, a badass MFer who we should never forget. And so I you know me, I always like to end on something funny. This isn't like hilarious funny, but I thought it was pretty good. I don't know if you know about this, but a few years ago, Kramer from Seinfeld, Michael Richards, tried to do some stand-up at the Comedy Store, and he was heckled. And so Mark Norman did this this bit where he kind of dressed up as Kramer and goes to do comedy and gets heckled. And this is kind of my token comedy clip for the night. So if you tuned in, thank you for doing so, and I hope you're enjoying the content. Please like and subscribe and all that good shit. Help me beat the algorithm. I do need to put out more clips. I have been sorely lacking. My TikTok is doing pretty well. I've been a little more active on TikTok with the clips, but I do need to get back to the YouTube clips because I feel like that's what actually draws the audience in. So I have people to watch these live streams. So I'm going to do better. And thank you again for paying attention. And please enjoy this clip of Mark Normand doing his Kramer impression. And I will see you next time. Peace.
Good to be here. Yeah, it's good to be back here in New York. Yeah, good to be back in the city. Good to be back here in New York City. Hey guys, seriously, hey, can I do my act here? Jeez. I'm just trying to do my show. Could you tone it down? All right. What's your problem, huh? What are you doing to me? Look, just trying to do some jokes here. All right. I came prepared in case this would happen. Hey, Tony!
Will you niggas shut the fuck up?